Hello. I'm pleased to announce the release of Loudness Penalty Studio 1.5. This is a free update for existing users, and we have a special cross-grade deal for anyone who's using the Loudness Penalty plugin and would like to give the application a try. If I want to try and sum up these features, I would say they make it faster, more flexible, and they give you more feedback. And in this video, I'm going to give you a quick walk through how these features work and why they might be helpful for you. First of all, as I mentioned, the application is faster. We've optimized the code. It is at least twice as fast and possibly much faster depending on your system and the length of the files that you're analyzing. So hopefully that's a real benefit to begin with. Now let's dive into some of the other features that we've added with this update. So probably the most immediately obvious difference with the new version is that we have added what we call the loudness profile. And that is this graph that you can see on each of the blocks. Each block, of course, represents a file that you've loaded in. The pink line is the integrated LUFS of that file. The top of the block is the peak level. The white area is the loudness range. So the top of it is the loudest 5% of moments in the file. The bottom of that is the lowest 10% of moments in that file. So it gives you an idea of how much variation of loudness there is across the length of the audio file. And this new loudness profile gives us the short-term loudness of each file as it plays. So you can see at a glance that this file is very loud all the way through, whereas this file has some very loud sections and some quieter sections. This one over here, Aja by Steely Dan, is famously one of the more dynamic examples. So the loudness profile gives you an immediate way of getting an overall impression of how the loudness develops through the songs. And also you can see a crosshair here. So I can hover this over any section of one of the graphs. So for example, if we choose that section of My Helper by Silent Gratitude there, that is at minus 12.7 LUFS, whereas the loudest sections are up at minus 10.9. So almost 2 dB louder. And you can see from this graph that the top of the loudness range for each file really does correspond pretty well with the loudest moments of each song. And of course, this feature becomes particularly interesting when we enable loudness matching, because we can see how the loud and quiet sections of each song compare when the integrated loudness is at the same level. So you can see that even the loudest moments of Broken, Beaten, Scarred by Metallica are not as loud as some sections in Enter Sandman, which started off being a whole 8 dB louder before normalization was enabled. And you can see that the loudest sections of My Master of My Helper are actually up at minus 11 when the integrated loudness is at minus 14, whereas Broken, Beat and Scarred and Bangarang at their loudest moments only get up to minus 13 LUFS. And of course, that's not why I mastered my songs at lower level. I just felt that they sounded better with more dynamics. And this is an interesting consequence of that. Depending on your perspective, depending on how you view it, I see that as a benefit for my master, which has loud sections when normalized up at minus 11. That's a whole couple of dBs louder than the songs that were originally mastered at higher LUFS. Whether you agree with me or not, of course, is up to you, but hopefully you can see how the new loudness profile feature in Loudness Penalty Studio gives you a really interesting perspective. And the crosshair is very cool as well. It allows me to eyeball what other songs have a loudness at a similar level to the one that I'm interested in. And of course, as always, we've got the loudness penalties displayed here by the pink arrows showing how much the level will be reduced or increased. One other thing I want to point out at this section, I've talked about this before, but you'll notice that, the most obvious example here is Aja has not been lifted up to minus 14 LUFS because the peaks were already going above zero, the true peaks, I should say. And of course, that's one of those things that Loudness Penalty Studio is useful for. It gives us a heads up that if we go with Aja with this particular sound, it's not going to be normalized up as loud as other loud songs on Spotify or, in fact, on Apple Music or the other services. However, that does mean that we can't do, using Loudness Penalty Studio, a fully loudness matched comparison between Aja and the other files in this list. And that's why, if you're really eagle-eyed, you might have noticed the next new feature that we have added. We have changed streaming platform here to matching method, and we've added a couple of new options. So as well as being able to choose between Amazon, Apple, Deezer, Spotify, Tidal and YouTube for your loudness matching, you can now choose a new option called lowest LUFS. And there you can see that it has pulled all of the files down to the lowest integrated loudness of the files in the list, which in this case is Asia. So rather than having this difference in loudness, we now have a completely matched integrated loudness between these different songs, and we can do comparisons with them in that case. Now, I should say that this option and the next one that I'm going to show you have not yet been implemented by any of the major streaming services. So this is to allow us to do accurate comparisons. I find it particularly useful, for example, if I'm trying to compare a master with an unmastered mix. Often the loudness of an unmastered mix will be even lower than -16.9 that we're seeing here with Asia, and the peaks could easily get up close to 0. There's no way we're going to get them to match at -14 or -16 LUFS or whatever that might be. And you may already have noticed that even though the integrated LUFS of these files are matched, the loudest moments of the songs at the top of the loudest range definitely aren't. And that actually is one of the limitations of integrated LUFS as a matching method. I think it's one of the big reasons that people are surprised by the way that their songs sound when they hear them online. It doesn't make sense to people that something they've mastered at high LUFS comes out not sounding as punchy as something that was mastered at lower LUFS. Now, it's taken so long for loudness normalization to be adopted by the streaming services in the first place. Honestly, I don't see this situation changing anytime soon, which is why it's so helpful to preview the effect of integrated LUFS loudness normalization with Loudness Penalty Studio. And it's up to all of us to make our own decisions about how we deal with that. But in the context of a loudness matching application like Loudness Penalty Studio, it's also an issue because this tells us what we will hear in the real world. But what if we actually just want to do a fair musical comparison between the songs? That's the reason that we've added this second extra matching method to the application, known as top of LRA. Now, you remember when I was introducing the block view here, I said that we have the peaks up at the top here. We have the integrated loudness, that is the pink line. We have the short-term loudness, which is the pale blue graph. And we also have the loudness range here. The white area shows the quietest moments and the loudest moments in each file, or at least an estimate of them. And we can use that as a matching method instead. You can see here, instead of matching the integrated LUFS, we've matched the top of the loudness range. And I'll just quickly skip through these examples so that you can compare how well you think these songs are balanced against each other using this method. Let's give it a try. I think you'll agree those are pretty well matched. Now let's switch back to, it's the lowest LUFS setting, but it's the same method of matching as all of these others. In every case, we are making the integrated loudnesses, the pink lines here, as equal as they can be, bearing in mind the distribution loudness of the streaming service. But if we choose lowest LUFS, we've got matched LUFS for all of them. Now let's compare those same loud moments from each song. And I think there you can hear exactly the issue with integrated LUFS as a matching method. And remember, we're looking at the sections where the short-term loudness is on the top of the loudness range. So these are the typical loudest moments of each song to make a fair comparison between each. To me, the loudest sections of tracks like My Helper and Aja actually sound considerably louder than the loudest sections of any of the super high LUFS examples we have here. You know, let's compare the Liam Gallagher and John Squire example. I can see So this, to me, shows why the name Loudness Penalty is applicable. I get lots of pushback against that, lots of people saying it's not real, but to me, these super high LUFS masters are paying a penalty in comparison to the more dynamic masters, at least at the loudest moments of the tracks. That's super valuable for us to know, but when we want to make a musical comparison between the songs, it's even more helpful to match them using the top of LRA. And remember, again, this is not yet implemented on any streaming service that I'm aware of. I personally think it's a more musical way of matching the loudness of these songs. Other comparisons you would want to do are between the beginnings and endings of each song with the two different modes to see how those compare. But that's beyond the scope of this video. But check back on the Production Advice YouTube channel. I'll be doing some more in-depth types of comparison like this in the future. So we've got the loudness profile, we've got the new matching methods, and the final large new feature we've added in this version of Loudness Penalty Studio is the ability to export all of this information as a PDF. This is one of the most requested features that we've had. And as you can see, it does exactly what it says on the tin. We've got the block view here at the top, including the current graphic visualization of the different files. We've got the individual track statistics for each file here summarized in a table: running time, LUFS, true peak, PLR, and LRA. And then at the end, we have a table summarizing the loudness penalties on the various different platforms. We don't include the lowest LUFS or top of LRA matching methods here because they're not implemented by currently any streaming platforms. So this is a nicely formatted file that you can save for your own records. You can send to your clients in order to explain to them how things are going to be treated on the various streaming platforms. So we have improved speed, we have the new loudness profile, we have new and helpful matching methods, we have the PDF summary export feature, as well as a handful of bug fixes and extra nice new little features like the loudness crosshair. So there you go. I hope that was helpful or useful. If you would like to try version 1.5 of Loudness Penalty Studio, please head over to meterplugs.com, where you can find all the information on how to upgrade if you're a plugin user already, get the free update if you already own Loudness Penalty Studio, or get started if you're new to this application. My name's Ian Shepherd. Thanks for listening.